So I recently got the challenge to take Class 1A and put them into the different Knights Radiant orders. So let's get into it. First off, we've got Midoriya. And if anybody thought that I was going to put him in any other order than Windrunner, you were wrong. He just embodies Windrunner. So Midoriya, Windrunner. Next, we've got Todoroki. His whole personal journey is about finding freedom, defining his own path, and breaking free of preconceived notions of what he needs to be in order to be his own person. And so I put him in Will Shaper. Next, we've got Bakugo. I put Bakugo in Dustbringer. If you look at the Brandon Sanderson website and you take a look at the definition of Dustbringer, you find a lot about their emphasis on power and control and wanting to use that power and that control to be more. And that seems to be like Bakugo's whole shtick. Next is my boy Kirishima. I put Kirishima into the Stone Ward order, primarily because Stone Wards are just so reliable. They're so sturdy. And when you think about Kirishima and his emotional reliability and his strength, like that's just who he is. So I put him into Stone Ward. Next, we have Ida. Now, I put Ida into the order of Truth Watcher, primarily because of his reliance on rules and his emphasis on following the right procedure and being just completely to the T. Now, I do think that Truth Watchers have a little bit more strictness, and I think we've seen Ida become more flexible, so I don't think it's a perfect fit, but it is the best fit from what I see. Next, we have Yayorozu. Now, I put her into the Else Caller category. She is about becoming the best version of herself. Else Callers seem to be about general knowledge and other types of strengths that aren't necessarily about physical capability and using that to be better than other people. It's just like she's competing with herself. And so that's why I put her into the Else Caller category. Next, we have Uraraka. Now, I put her into the Edge Dancer order. Primarily the reason why is because of her continued pattern of remembering and paying attention to the little guy. Now, it was a little bit of a toss-up for me of putting her either in Edge Dancer or Windrunner because I do think she has a lot of honor, but I also think that a lot of her character is about looking at herself. She does strive to be somebody for other people, and I think that Windrunners look a little bit more external. So it's kind of a toss-up for me, but I ended up putting her in Edge Dancer. Next, we have Asui. I put her into the Truth Watcher order. Primarily the reason why is because a lot of what she does involves watching to see what the truth is before she acts on it. Now, I also saw a little bit of Edge Dancer in her because she does remember the little guy, but you do see a lot of overlap between Truth Watchers and Edge Dancers anyway, so I kind of see her as being both, but because of how quiet and how attentive she is to the facts, I put her in Truth Watcher. Next, we have Kaminari, who I put into the Lightweaver order. One of the main reasons why I did that is because Lightweavers do care about truth, but they care about their truth, and they care about living up to that truth. Kaminari seems to define his own way of thinking and feeling and doing things, and he doesn't really bend from that, and he's not apologetic about it. But it is nice to see somebody who is who they are, and they're not going to change that just because of other people's expectations. Much like I did with Todoroki, I also put Jiro into the order of Will Shaper. We see Jiro constantly going against the grain, being who she is, and really exploring what she wants to do with her life outside of the confines of people's expectations, and that's why I also put her into Will Shaper. Ashita was kind of difficult for me to place. One, because I think she has a little bit of both Else Caller and Will Shaper, and those two do see some overlap, so it makes sense. She's also a little bit tough to define just because she hasn't been highlighted in the series just yet, so we haven't explored all of her personality nuance. But as we do, I think that she has less of that chaotic freedom desire and more of the exploration piece. So that's why ultimately I put her into Else Caller. Notably, I did the same sort of thing that I did with Ashido with Tokoyami. I put him into L's collar as well because he kind of displays the same sort of traits. He wants freedom, but he also does prioritize knowledge. He pursues the knowledge of his powers, but he also wants to find freedom within the constraints of his very difficult power to wield. And so you see him constantly developing and innovating to be the best version of himself using the knowledge that he gains. So that balance, I think, puts him more into L's collar. Next, we have Shoji. He's very reliable, but he also has a strong sense of justice. And so I put him into Windrunner. He's very protective. He is very strong, but he uses that strength for other people. And so because of that, I see him following Midoriya into the Windrunner category. Now, Sero was also a little bit difficult for me to define. Ultimately, I put him in Edge Dancer because I do think that he has a big heart and he cares about the other people around him. And we do see him playing some support roles during some of the exercises where he wants to take care of people. Honestly, I could see him falling in other categories like even Windrunner just because of some of the strengths that he displays during the course of the series. But just for now, I'm putting him in Edge Dancer. Similarly, Hagakure is also kind of difficult to place. Now, this is a little bit unfortunate because I think that she doesn't get a whole lot of attention outside of some of the slapstick comedy pieces. For now, what I did was I put her into Edge Dancer, which I know is starting to sound kind of like a catch-all, but it is because she does display a lot of heart and a lot of care for the people around her. Next, we have Aoyama. I put him into Lightweaver, and no, it's not just because of the belly button light, even though that is a big part of it, admittedly. The reason why I stuck with Lightweaver for him is, again, emphasizing the truth for themselves. They are not necessarily interested in external truth. Lightweavers care about internal truth and living up to that. And Aoyama is, once again, unapologetically himself. Even if people don't necessarily vibe with it, even if people think that he's a little bit weird, which is a very classic part of what being a Lightweaver is. Joining Kirishima in the Stoneboard category is Sato. Sato is very reliable. He's very strong, but not just with his physical strength, it's also his emotional dependability. He's so heartwarming. And the fact that he bakes, even though he's a big guy, I understand why, because of his power. But I just find that so refreshing. And so this really leans into the idea of being dependable. That's why I put Sato into that category, because of his dependability. Next we have Koda, who I also put into the Edge Dancer category. Now this one, I do think he pretty solidly belongs into Edge Dancer. He literally talks to creatures that people forget about. And I love that aspect of who he is. I think that that big heart and the love that he has for other people and for creatures definitely puts him into the Edge Dancer category. Next we have Ojiro, who I also put into the Truth Watcher category, much like Asui. Now, I think that he is also a little bit difficult to define. I could see him as going into the Windrunner category, but ultimately I put Ojiro into Truth Watcher because of the way that he watches for the situation. He assesses, he's analytical, he doesn't just jump into the action. Because of the way that he's a little bit more reserved, I put Ojiro into Truth Watcher, but I am not married to that. I think that a case could be made for other orders, especially Windrunner. I also wanted to categorize All Might, and I put him as Bondsmith. Now, I think that's a pretty easy one to see the connection for, because Bondsmiths connect things, they bond things, they bind things together, and that's literally what All Might does with his power. He is connecting all of these abilities into his body, but he also connects Class 1A. He connects a lot of the heroes in how he approaches things and the way that he wants to see the future play out. So I put him as Bondsmith. Finally, we have Mineta, who is a Kremling.